Hey teammates, welcome to another episode of It's All About the Team. And we're really fortunate today to have with us Dr. Jennifer Pintar, our Provost at Youngstown State University. Great to have you.
They think they know what's going on at the university, and they don't.
I don't know what percent of them know exactly what a provost is.
It's a great question because I don't think I knew what it was either back in the day. My friends were double dog daring me. Now, if you get double dog dared, you have to do it.
Let's not be afraid of what AI is going to be on a negative standpoint. Let's be excited about what it can do for learning.
And so people are at YSU not for the money. They're there because they love YSU. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this.
All right, we'll have a little bit of fun. And, I think our viewers are a wide range of people trying to see if they can add value to whatever team they have, maybe their team at home or maybe their sports team, or it might be their business, it might be their school, it might be their church, it might be whomever. And I don't know what percent of them know exactly what a provost is.
So a provost reports to the president of a university and is in charge of everything that involves academics on the campus. And it's a great question because I don't think I knew what it was either back in the day.
Right? It's like, I always thought as the head coach that my defensive coordinator had to be extraordinary. And then when I became a president, I thought, hey, my provost has got to be extraordinary. And we're fortunate here at YSU to have an extraordinary provost. And you're doing a great job. And we're going to brag a little bit about what you're doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you have grown to learn how to be a good teammate and how to build teams, and it always starts at home. We in education know this. We can tell who have had a little head start at home, who maybe have not had some of the benefits of a great head start at home. So let's go back, since you mentioned off camera before, you talked about your parents and they're no longer with us, but what did you learn about being a good teammate from them?
Well, it's interesting. I've listened to your other podcasts, and there's been some great stories about upbringings and families, and I had a great one as well. My father was born in 1933, so it was a different time and era and place, and I think his definition of a parent-child relationship was not one that I shared. I think I came out of the womb curious, and my father was the type, well, you're doing this because I said so. I'm the parent. You will do this. And there wasn't much discussion about the why of it. Reflecting back, I think I understand where he put his priorities, but it was always, you will be on the phone for this much time, and if you stay on longer, it was before cell phones. He'd just disconnect that line. You will sit at the table doing homework for this amount of time, and if you're done with your homework, then read the next chapter. It was a very educational focus, but it was also a pretty restrictive childhood, and how he raised me was almost, I would say, what I would assume would be more of like a military-like upbringing, with very scheduled and very disciplined. And it wasn't until a lot longer, till probably my college years, I would say him and I had a pretty rough discussion. And that was pretty common because I pushed back on a lot of things. But he said, it was before cell phones, so he called and said, I'll be at your school in an hour and a half. Be ready. So I thought, uh-oh, this is not going to go well. So he picks me up, and we went to lunch. It was the first time I saw my father cry. He broke down and he said, I know I'm hard on you and your brother and even your mom, but I'm just so afraid of losing what we have. We have such a great family and everything's good. I just don't want to lose it. And I think that was really the first time my father was transparent and communicated with me.
Right.
And even if I didn't agree with what he was saying, I understood him then. I understood the angle he was coming from.
You knew the why.
I knew the why.
Yep.
And that transparency was so important to me. Looking back at it, my dad he was a nuclear physicist, so his whole life was about risk and exposure and safety and containing risks and exposures. So it wasn't until that moment that I really understood my dad, and I think felt like I was part of that team, the family team, right? Because I whether I thought his point was good or not, I understood him.
So you were a swimmer.
I was.
Which was discipline and
Yes.
so forth. Why join that team?
Well, that's actually a funny story. I was in a lot of sports, but never swimming. It was high school. I had not prepared for an exam, and being with my dad's expectations, I really didn't want to take the F. And some divine intervention across the intercom came, physicals for the swim team will be today. And I thought, here is my out. And so I raised my hand. The teacher calls me and says, I can't take the test. I got to go to the physical. And my friends are all around laughing. They knew what I was up to. I had no interest in swimming at all. I did the physical. By the time I got back, because back in the day, they did physicals at school without parent consent. I mean, that would never happen nowadays. So I just walked down, got the physical, came back. There's about 5 minutes left in the class, and my friends were double dog daring me. Now, if you get double dog dared, you have to do it.
Right.
And they were saying, you're never going to last the entire season. And so I took that as a dare, and I went to swim practice, and I was like one of those characters on the video games that doesn't matter. You know, I was pushed in the slow lane because I wasn't really trying. And then one day, one of the swimmers didn't show up, and she was a backstroker. And my coach said, Jen, get in lane 6. So I get in lane 6.
At a meet?
At a swim meet.
Oh,
it was a full swim meet. So I get in lane 6, and I don't want to be that embarrassed, right? So I'm trying really hard. I didn't know how to do a flip turn. I grab on the end and just push off the wall. And it's 4 lanes. So I'm going through my head, and I'm counting it. And I get done, and I stop, and I'm sure I counted 4, but all these other swimmers are still finished. Like, no one else is at the wall. And I thought initially, oh my gosh, I didn't go enough. I didn't do 4 lanes. But here I'd won.
Wow.
And so at that point, then my parents started coming to my swim meets. They didn't even know I knew how to swim. They started coming to the swim meets, and it just turned in, it probably changed a lot of my life now that I think about it, because from there I started to be a lifeguard. I taught swim lessons. I swam in college. I met enough people that I became more involved in the school. I sat on the student government, became the vice president of the student government, decided higher ed's for me.
Wow.
Applied to grad school. They just happened to need someone who knew how to work in the pool at University of Pittsburgh. And so they hired me as a TA for lifeguarding, for everything related to the pool, swimming, and started paying for all my degrees.
Wow.
And so I stayed there and just kept accumulating degrees because Pitt paid for everything. So
It was a bad deal.
It was a big change in my life.
My middle brother, I'm the youngest, was a swimmer. My oldest brother was a football, basketball, baseball, so was I, but that was his thing. And I always admired the discipline and just, up in the morning and they swam, and then, afternoon, the 2 days and all that. And so I didn't know if that disciplined upbringing was like, hey, you're going to go be a swimmer and you're going to do this.
No.
Nope, it was
that was
by accident.
It was totally by accident. And I think it gave me a lot of confidence in my abilities, a lot of self-efficacy, a lot of self-esteem that I picked something that no one had selected for me. Mm-hmm. It was something I fell into by accident. The double dog dares helped. Mm-hmm. I wanted to prove myself, and it worked out really well.
Well, there was a competitive aura in your house.
For sure.
As evidenced by
For sure.
expectations. And I often think about that continuum of pushing too hard or being too, whatever you want. That's a big continuum. And I often think about the best teachers and the best coaches I was ever around were the ones that helped you understand the difficulty of the challenge, helped you decide if you wanted to be good. And as I sit and listen about your dad, I think the why was he wanted you to be safe and so forth.
Right.
But he wanted you to be good.
Yes.
And he wanted, without much explanation, to help you understand, here's what it takes to be good.
Right.
And
Right.
I just worry, and since you and I have both been in education, I was 48 years and you've been how many?
25.
25. Have you seen a change from that, hey, you're going to do this and it's going to be good for you, you'll figure it out why later, to the, oh, go do what you want and so forth? Have you seen any shift in your 25 years?
You know, having daughters, I have 2 daughters, and I think I use a mix of my father's lessons, and really I think the biggest lesson I took from him, well, there's 2. One was the transparency, like when he finally told me what his pain points were, and I could relate to him. And so I took that with my daughters and tried to explain to them why I'm feeling a certain way, or why I want them to do this or that, and why I think it's important. But my dad also always focused on education. And the pieces kind of fell together when we had that conversation, because his phrase that he would say all the time is, always get your degrees, because no matter what happens to you in life, you could lose your job, you could lose your house, you could lose a lot, you could lose everything, but no one can ever take your degrees away from you, as long as you stay ethical, right?
Sure.
No one can ever take your degrees away from you. And so when I think back to how he did raise me, much like your first guest, he put his effort where his belief system was. And his belief system was in education. So I wasn't allowed on the phone for more than 10 minutes because I better be studying. I had to sit at that table and study because that was what was most important in my life. I wasn't allowed to work when I was in high school or college because that was my job. And so that emphasis is very much on accountability for what is most important in your life. And so I try and talk to my daughters about that, but allow them to make their own choices. Recently on a call with not recently, a couple years ago, talking to one of my daughters, she said, she was telling me this story, and I went into immediate mom mode. I want to fix it. I want to just fix it for her. And she said, Mom, you know what? I appreciate you wanting to help me. She said, but sometimes I just want to talk to you about it. I don't want you to fix all my problems. So we decided on our conversations when she tells me something that sounds like a problem. As soon as she's done, I say, are you telling me for me to know, or are you telling me because you need my help to solve it? And then she'll tell me, and then we'll go whichever route. But, letting the child make mistakes, make decisions for themselves, I think is something that I didn't maybe have growing up because things were decided for me, that I think is a nice balance.
Well, education is power.
Oh, yeah.
And thank goodness your parents, weren't going to have that any other way.
No.
But I think a good teammate is a good listener, as you described, whether you're a teammate of the supervisor and the person who's working in that department, or your, coworkers.
Agreed.
Wanting to hear, wanting to listen. But, I talked to students for years and years, and most recently as president, I had come to the conclusion that the common denominators that I saw in students in 40-some years of watching 18 to 22-year-olds,
Right.
the common denominators were really pretty simple. One was, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Show me your teammates, I'll show you your future. And where I struggled a little bit to help my players over the years understand is a friend isn't someone who always simply is fun to be with, supports you, got your back, fight for you, whatever, but it's someone who'll tell you the truth. It's someone who'll say, hey, let's get out of here, or hey, this isn't a good idea, or maybe we better study, or maybe we better train harder. But who you align yourself with, who your teammates are, huge.
It is.
I mean, it's huge. The second thing that I came to the conclusion watching students for all those years was that get involved outside of your coursework, because life isn't just about facts and figures and knowledge. Life is about experiences, and get on teams.
Right.
I've said often, I love the fact I was on a football team in college, I was in a fraternity, but probably the most valuable thing was I was on the school newspaper staff, which was a whole bunch of people that, I didn't have much in common with, quite honestly.
Right.
But get involved. And then the third thing I used to always tell them is, you're going to be a lot better teammate, you're going to have, your trajectory is going to go maybe the way you want it, is if you pay attention to your finances. So often kids, and when we talk to kids about going to college, one thing good about getting good grades is maybe you get some scholarship money. Be smart about taking too much student debt. It's so critical, because finances really impact your ability to be a teammate, whether it's at home or out in the world, because when you're struggling and you've made poor decisions, it just seems to compound the wrong way. We were talking off air about the importance of a great endowment at a university or in a company or whatever. Finances are so critical. I had a chance to watch your two daughters, so I know you did a great job. And you mentioned you were student government vice president.
Yes, my daughter.
Daughter Jordan is student body president at Youngstown State, and a great leader, and daughter Reagan is now a YSU student, and flourishing and doing great things. So what maybe we've learned from our parents, because when I was growing up, there wasn't any discussion you were going to do well in school.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't feel it was an oppressive thing. I thought it was, that was just the expectations, and that's what you did. I remember talking to my son one time in like 5th grade. I said, Zach, why do you do so well in school? I mean, do you like it that much or whatever? He said, no. He said, you know what, I want to get a good degree because I want to make some money someday. So you never know what's what with the kids and so forth. So we learned that you went to Pitt because you were a swimmer, and that was your in.
That was my in.
Tell me, as you went through those levels, I mean, I wrote it down. You got your MS in exercise physiology, your MPH in epidemiology, and PhD in exercise biology. All different teams, all different departments. Think back, what did you learn about being a teammate or building a team from that?
Good question. So I got in through the swimming route as my TA position. And then one of the top investigators, researchers in the field was at the University of Pittsburgh. And I wanted to work for him because at that point I decided, what else am I going to do with all these degrees but go into higher ed? And I knew I wanted to be in higher ed, so I was very happy with that decision. So I met with him, interviewed, and he told it to me straight. He said, this interview is not about how smart you are. He goes, this interview is going to be about your personality. And he said, I can take a trained monkey, essentially, and have him do whatever I need to do. And he was exaggerating, but the point was, it doesn't matter how smart you are. He said, it's the personality that's going to connect with the people that I need to bring in. And when you're doing research and you have human subjects, they don't want to be there. Most likely they're doing it for some other reason. They're getting paid or, whatever. They got in trouble. Whatever it is, they're there for a reason. So you're going to have to have the personality to the point where people want to pick up the phone when they see your number and you're calling them. And people want to come in and give a full effort during the research study. And you're going to have to be very detail-oriented and hard on them, but a good personality, because you need to be hard on them to get them motivated to do what they need to do to make sure that the study is a success. And so that was probably the first time, my dad had so much emphasized on education, and I think swimming taught me discipline and confidence. But this was the first time that really personality, and I mean, I'm here getting my PhD, he's like, you're all going to be smart. He said, but it's going to be the personality that's going to get people to be on your team or not. And that meant a lot to me. Like, and when I came to YSU and I was an interviewer for the med school, they all had high GPAs, right, or they wouldn't be interviewing. And so going back to your point of being involved in different activities, that's what separated students, because the more diverse their activities were, and you mentioned about being with people that maybe you didn't normally connect with, but it gave you probably, I'm guessing, a diverse view of how different people think and act and talk, and that's what we looked for, because otherwise you're looking at a GPA and the med school exam, and that's it. There's not much that's going to separate these kids. So I do have a firm belief that development of a personality that people want to, you can't be a leader if no one's following. And if people don't want to be with you, you're not leading anybody. And so to me, of course, transparency is important. That's communication. Confidence in your abilities and surrounding yourself with people that you're confident in is another big one. And then the personality, that people want to hang around with you. You know, at Youngstown State, we're fortunate to have a very affordable tuition, but that also means that we don't have a lot of revenue. And so people are at YSU not for the money. So our faculty, our staff, they're there because they love YSU. And part of loving YSU is being surrounded by people that want to be the best, understand they could probably make a lot more money somewhere else, but that's where they want to be. And that's the environment I enjoy.
I just had that conversation with some coaches.
Yeah.
See, you'll find out someday if you ever retire, don't do it, because I flunked retirement. But I was having this conversation about the staff. Mm-hmm. And almost exactly what you're saying. I said, don't get caught up in some guru who thinks they know all these X's and O's and can't connect.
Right.
You know, and that transparency you brought up, that you used the word personality. The word I like to use is, I want someone who they know cares about us.
Yeah.
Which you had to convince your subjects, your people that were coming in for your research, and that, you know what, that you cared about them. Even didn't matter why they were there.
Right.
But that you cared about them and you wanted to connect with them. And so when you went from major to major, did the research change, or why did you go from MS in exercise phys to MPH in epidemiology?
So when I was getting my PhD, you had to take so many credits outside your discipline. And what I liked about epidemiology was it was solving problems, it was solving puzzles. And so why is this population of Pima Indians have such a high level of diabetes? Why does this group seem so resistant to heart disease? And so it was really like trying to solve puzzles. And, I guess trace it back to my upbringing. I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of TV. We did puzzles or we read the encyclopedia. I mean, that's what we were, we didn't have cell phones again, so we were playing games on our cell phone. You had to actually play physical games. And so it was a lot of solving puzzles. And so it really intrigued me in the field of epidemiology.
So you got that master's while you were working on your PhD at the same time?
Right. Actually, I finished the MPH just before, I finished my second master's just before I finished the PhD. I started working here at YSU with all but dissertations. So I had all my coursework done. ABD. And I was just finishing that last paper and presenting it.
Hey teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Trestle Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at trestleinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. So how many years from the time you enrolled at W&J
till
you were finished with your degree at Pitt, your PhD?
11.
Wow. That's, when you talk to people about
Right.
getting to know each other. I know when I became a president, well, I didn't do 11 years of academic work, to get
Right.
a position. I did 4 years of college and then 1 year of year and a half of graduate school, and then I was on the staff.
Right.
And I tried to explain to our people who were not faculty that please help yourself understand a person that spends 11 years getting to the point where they can get on this team.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
different than you, okay? And the other thing that I thought was unique about a faculty member that I tried to get my people to understand was they spend 11 years or 8 years or 10 years or whatever it was. Then they spend 7 years trying to become tenured. Everyone thinks, every college professor is tenured and so forth. Well, just the cream of the crop, gets tenured. I said, so just think 15 years or more for this person to get to this point. And so I think a big part of having a good team is helping you have an appreciation, a compassion, and an awareness for how that person got there. And, it's
That's a good point.
So you came here and you did it all. I mean, instructor, assistant professor, associate professor. People don't realize that
The ladder.
The ladder. I mean, you have to pay your dues, right? And probably that your dad's upbringing probably
Right.
gave you that toughness to do it because it's not easy.
It's not easy.
And then you became what I think is the hardest job on a college campus, which is a department chair.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about what you learned about how do I become a good teammate while I'm walking the ladder as a professor, and then how it changed and what did you need to do to build a team as a department chair, because that's not easy.
It's not easy. I was blessed with having in the exercise science department people that were used to being on teams. So they were all former athletes or in that ballpark. So they're used to that team concept in that format. But what I, again, found interesting was that extra challenge at each level. I could impact students when I was a faculty member at one level, and it's not a better or lower level, it's just one branch. And then you hop over to this branch, and it's just a different view. It's not better, it's not. Department chair is a lot of work, you're right. And a lot of the difficulty is trying to motivate people to do what's right, but also thinking about being a good steward to the university. And so you're always straddling that line of working directly face-to-face with people that are experts in their field. I mean, all these faculty members have their PhDs, and but when you're in a department, you're all usually in the same field or similar fields. When you go to the next level, when I was associate provost, now it was everybody's discipline was the best, right?
Of course.
It is the best.
Of course.
Because that's why they spent that many years studying it, because they feel it's the best.
And it should be supported
Should be supported
accordingly.
equally.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And so then you get to the point where you're trying to balance faculty, balancing disciplines, and balancing the needs of the university and the needs of the community and the needs of those that support the university. And a lot of that, I do go back to what happened with me and my dad, and that is that transparency. That is constantly communicating. And even when people don't want to hear what you have to say, if you can't trust your leader, if you can't trust the person who is rowing that boat with you, then you're going to be alone in that boat. And so constantly communicating, telling them exactly how you feel, and not being afraid of it. That's the confidence piece too. Being confident enough that you've done your research and you've checked all the facts, that when you make an assertion, you can back it up. And then that builds the confidence from your teammates. And so in an institution where everyone's very smart, and a lot of times I look at people and go, you're way smarter than me. It makes you realize that what separates you from them is just the knowledge base that you have, seeing the entire university and looking at it from that branch versus the branch they have. And, we see that with community members too. Sometimes they think they know what's going on at the university, and they don't. But you can't take it personally,
right?
Because everyone has their passions. And that if they knew the full story, they would understand, and they'd be part of the team too.
So biggest difference, teammate who's on the faculty and teammate who now is in a supervisory role, whether it's department chair, associate provost, or provost. What did you feel like you had to be differently to be an effective teammate as you changed that role?
Well, I learned from you. You were the president for many years that I was serving in the associate provost, vice provost capacity. And that was truly not just listening, but mindfully listening. And you always remembered people's names. You remembered things about their week prior to or the last conversation, and you brought it up with them. And that feeling, again, it goes back to feeling that people care. Making sure people understand that it doesn't matter if you're second in command at a university or if you're, their fellow faculty member, knowing that you care about them and not just for work. You care about how they're doing personally and professionally and in all aspects of life. I think that matters. And never feeling like you don't have time for them. Like, you always have time. You make time. And I think that's what's most important.
The best teams care about each other.
Right.
Sometimes you're competing for the position, the person you needed to beat in backstroke, but
right.
To be a good teammate, you're the right kind of friend. Like, hey, let's go down and train a little bit. Let's go get to the weight room. It's, to me, that's the hardest thing, because humanly we're selfish by nature. And it takes intentional work to be a good teammate.
It does.
So we have challenges in higher ed.
Yes.
Now our viewers have challenges in their businesses or their families or their teams or whatever. We've got just as many in higher ed as anyone else does.
We do.
So tell me what you think right now is the biggest challenge this team has. I don't mean YSU,
right.
I mean higher ed.
Higher ed in general. Higher ed has a few challenges. One is, we've heard about the demographic cliff. So 18 years ago, people quit having as many babies. And so we don't have as many 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. So you're going to start to see graduation rates from high school dropping. It doesn't mean they're not completing high school. It means we just don't have as many humans. That's the first problem. You don't have as many students graduating from high school. There's not as many entering college. The other issue we have is, social media. Let's face it, there's a handful of people that have made it really well and not attended college. Handful.
Sure.
Just like what you're used to, there's a handful of athletes that make it to the big leagues, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But sometimes that message gets confused with you don't need to go to college to earn a lot of money. And that's not true. If you look at the national average, even the board game of life, remember the board game of life? You go this route and you get this profession that makes significantly less than if you go this route, which takes a little bit more spaces, but you pick that card and you make more money. I mean, that's still true to this day. There's definitely a pay grade increase for associates, bachelor, master's, doctorate degree. So there's a definite pay difference. But I think there's been a lot of negative press that college degrees aren't worth it. And so that's where at universities we have to become, in higher ed, we have to become more agile. We have to make sure we have a space for everyone. So for those students that don't really want to get a full degree, workforce education, certificate type of things. For those who have a little more taste, maybe an associate's degree, which is 60 hours roughly. And then keep your bachelor's degrees, but don't forget that there was a lot of students that upon graduation from high school went straight into the workforce and now maybe want to come back for the bachelor's degree. But they can't sit in the class next to the 18-year-old. They have a family. They have a job. So how can you be accessible to them? So those online programs are becoming more and more important. And so I think it's always keeping in mind that there's a variety of needs out there. Some people want to reskill or upskill for just that next level in their job.
Get that promotion. Yeah.
Get that promotion. And having higher ed be that resource again and be looked at as that resource again. We've always been that resource, but for that to be the first consideration, I think is where higher ed needs to focus their efforts and keep in mind being agile as possible in a world of higher ed.
That agility, I believe in that. What's interesting to me is talk about building teams.
Right.
And so let's say our team is education. What concerns me a little bit, and I talk with whether it's the governor or the lieutenant governor or the senators and so forth that are funding our higher ed, what concerns me is I don't know if we've done a great job of building an education team. The education from preschool through K through 12, through trades, certificates, 2 years, 4 years, all the way to PhDs. I just worry we haven't worked together as much as we could.
Right.
How do you think we could do that better?
That's a great question. I think whoever has that answer should share it. I think what it involves is understanding students at a younger age. I think a lot of students get turned off, and this is my personal opinion, a lot of students get turned off in grade school and middle school because what do we make them do? They go to class and they sit.
Yeah.
And they sit for the entire day. We don't sit for an entire day. But that's their vision of what education is you have to take this class even though you don't know the purpose of it and you don't know when you're ever going to use it, and sit in that seat for 8 hours. And you can only get up if you back in my day, you ask for the pass, to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
But otherwise, I don't think that we've really caught up with the times in, I'm going to say K through 12. My daughters were raised in a Montessori environment where it was very active learning. And I think that's where we really need to focus our energy, is a much more active learning, experiential learning kind of atmosphere that engages students. And not all students are going to want to be college bound, and not all students want to be workforce education bound. And students typically know that at a younger age. They know what they're feeling, but they're still forced to sit in that chair for a long day.
In fairness to the people that are trying to educate the masses, there are masses.
Oh, yeah.
And it's difficult to create that environment that we think might be optimal. But I guess where I think we've fallen short, and again, I was only in higher ed administration like 12 years, so that I don't know if we've worked together with the K through 12 people, with the community college people, with the trades people, and said, hey, folks, how can we serve these masses better?
Right.
And I know right near the end of the Kasich administration, which would have been, 2016 or so, 2017 maybe, they were talking about maybe getting all those groups under one umbrella so that they would spend some time together rather than independently lobbying for budget,
right?
Which is right
what we're doing.
And one of the profound things I learned at New President School when I went was
Harvard.
At Harvard. Yeah, I'm a Harvard grad.
Yes, you are.
6 days, but and most people takes 4 years. I graduate in 6 days, but until you have the right plan, your plan becomes your budget. How many times did I say that to you guys? And all we seem to do is haggle over our budget, as opposed to saying, what is the best plan? And, one of my goals in life is to somehow, if we can get the component parts of education together, and it's becoming more of a conversation. I think you're listening nationwide to people talking about, better schools, I want school choice, this, that. I think there's more conversation about it, and so I'm hoping we can, as educators, as leaders in that, figure out how to build a better education team. And I think there's going to be a lot going on the next few years, and you guys will be right in the middle of it. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, I was really impressed with the TED Talk you did.
Yeah, thank you.
On AI and its impact on education. And I have told more people they needed to tune into Youngstown TEDx or whatever it's called,
right.
and because I kind of nudged you to do it because they asked me to do a TED Talk or something. I said, no, I think we got someone better to do this TED Talk.
Is that how it came?
And it worked out that way. But share with our viewers a little bit about your vantage point, because AI's a buzz, right?
AI's a buzz.
AI's a buzz. AI's impact on education or opportunity or whatever.
You know, to me, artificial intelligence is the same as computers were when they started. It's the same as the internet when it started. The first reaction is, we're going to use it for cheating. People aren't going to be highly educated. You know, there's so much initial reaction to it instead of thinking about it and responding. And one of the things that I believe in is, if we don't address AI, then our students are going to figure it out on their own. And then we don't have that positive opportunity to impact how they use it and how to teach students to use it ethically. I personally think AI is a great tool. It's one of those things where, to me, I'd like to change how we teach, and instead of having students write long papers, have AI generate the paper and then have students talk about what AI generated. Have AI serve as a tutor for the student who is struggling with a math problem, and have AI help them step by step work it out. We can have AI do all those things where it doesn't give the answer, but it can help you get to the next step, and the student can ask a question or
know why.
Know
right?
why.
Yeah.
And so every little step of AI, and if we don't do it, others do it. AI gets trained by whoever's using it. And so the more we use it, the more of an influence we have and our students can have on it.
I thought one of the cool things was when you talked about the triangle, what was the...
Bloom's taxonomy.
Bloom's taxonomy.
Right.
It made so much sense to me, not having been an expert on Bloom's taxonomy. As you can see, I didn't even remember it, what it was called. But anyway, talking about we can spend more time on the higher end of learning if we're not all caught up in the mundane of the lower levels.
That's right.
Clean that up for me a little bit.
Right. Well, in Bloom's taxonomy, there's low levels of thinking, there's high levels of thinking. And so if you allow AI to do the low levels, similar to what a calculator does for you in a math problem, when I taught statistics, we spent a lot of time at first, because it's how I was taught, to do all of these statistical analyses by hand. Mm-hmm. And then I got to thinking, these students aren't ever going to do this by hand in life. They're never going to do it. And so why not let them use the software and spend more time talking about where the p-value is and what that means for statistical significance and what the ultimate take of that decision is. And so I use that philosophy with AI too. Allow AI to do the mundane and then have the students do the higher critical thinking skills. And in class, talk more and teach more about critical thinking, and allow the computer to do the work on the lower level items of Bloom's taxonomy. And so I'm a firm believer that the more we get AI to work with us, the more we'll see that we can be good partners in education.
And I think the big takeaway I had from it too was, let's not be afraid of what AI is going to be on a negative standpoint. Let's be excited about what it can do for learning.
It can.
What it can do for everything that we do. And it's funny, I talked to all these coaches through the course of the seasons, and the big buzz in football now is analytics.
Yes.
Are you going to go for it on 4th and 2? Well, and so now they have someone to blame it on. Well, the analytics guy said,
He told us to.
He told us to go for it. But if you can get to that point of why you make decisions without having to experience,
right.
it all the way along, because you don't live long enough to have experience in everything.
Right.
And so if you can get that help, and so I'll be anxious to to see how it does change our education system in general, higher ed specifically. Probably the thing, when people ask me all the time, what was your best win in higher ed? You know, they love to ask me about coaching and this and that, and my answer in coaching was my best wins are what my guys are doing now. It's not...
It's not the ball game where your wife allowed you
yeah.
to get the convertible?
Yeah, right. Well, I haven't
It's a
told the
different
story
story.
about getting my
Oh, okay.
convertible.
Okay.
Ellen got me a convertible after we won the Rose Bowl. It took me 9 years. But anyway, we'll tell that story another day. But, so, you know, as you think about, you know, what we're trying to get done, my biggest exciting thing as president of Youngstown State was when we got here, probably for 50 to 80 years, the graduation rate
Yes.
was in the mid-30s.
Yes.
Now, a lot of reasons. Urban institution, finances, people decide maybe they don't want to go to college, but it was 35%.
Right.
I think our last cohort, the 2017 cohort, is going to be 52%. So that's a major jump. That means young people have come at a greater rate, and they're now going to be able to take with them. And so to me, whenever I get asked that question, that's probably my highlight, you know, as a president. As you think about being a provost and you're going to be a president someday, what would be the goals that here in the next 20 years you'd love to see that you could be a part of a team of education that does blank?
I'd love to be a part of a team that helps students feel that confidence that they can do it. Every student, and it doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree. It could be workforce education, associate degree, whatever it is. But to have that confidence that higher education is for you, and
for everyone.
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's for everyone. It's for them. It's for everyone that graduates, and I think to feel that success and to have that as something that you can always talk about your degrees and know that you accomplished that. You know, when some people say that the first thing they do in the morning is make their bed because check, they've got one accomplishment off the list. I think that's important for everybody's mental health and their physical health, and I do think that's the big thing that we need to get across in higher education.
Well, folks, I didn't do a good job talking about Dr. Pintar's TED Talk, so you need to go on TEDx Youngstown.
AI in higher education.
AI in higher education, because if you're like me and you don't know that much about AI and you have a little bit of question, is that going to be a good thing for us? I think after you watch that, you're going to feel good about that. And I just want, on behalf of all of you, to thank Dr. Pintar for being here. And you know, we've had a K through 12 person on. We've had lots of coaches and military people and business and so forth, but we couldn't have a complete, it's all about the team library without having higher ed, and we thank you so much and appreciate you being here. Till the next time, it's all about the team.